All right, this is a conversation with my father, Stephen Gregory Joseph Heiner. It's November of 2013. We are at the Hamilton Homestead out in St. Mary's, Kansas. Dad, thanks for letting me videotape you.
Fine, son.
All right, why don't we start with the basics. Tell us where you were born, who you were born to, and if you had any other siblings.
I was born in Los Angeles, California in 1938, October 4th. I have a twin sister, and we were both born, of course, in St. Vincent's Hospital in Los Angeles. And to my mother, Angela Kearns Heiner, my father, Lawrence George Heiner. Both came from the Middle West and happened to meet in California. And we lived in Westwood in my early youth, and quite a very nice suburb of Los Angeles, well-to suburb. And we happened to have two homes on the same street, Comstock Avenue in Westwood. That comes within about 4 doors of each other. I don't know why they happened to move down the street, but I remember the homes when I was very young. My parents pointed them out to them. And I lived in the one home, 1509 Comstock Avenue, till I was about 6 or 7.
Did your parents tell you how they met, or do you remember?
Yes, I remember the story. My father was in the perfume and cosmetic business, and he was calling upon accounts. And he called upon one store called Gary's in maybe Beverly Hills, and my mother was working the counter, and he asked one of the buyers to wrap it up for me, and I'll take it home with me after my call here. So it was kind of a cute scene.
And the rest is history, as they say.
Well, I guess they must have dated for several years, and then we didn't come on right away, but I suppose after several years we were born. They both happened to be from the Midwest, and the families came out. In fact, my dad came out on his own from Illinois. Illinois. My mother came from Grand Forks, Minnesota with her parents and her brother. They came out here after the Depression and just happened to meet.
Now, I know you've done some genealogy work before, Dad. How far back were you able to go with our ancestry? And when did we get to this country, and from what areas?
I have to give all the credit to my uncle who did all this work, and my dad's brother. He did all the genealogy work, and he went to a lot of resources, of course, doing this back in the early 1900s. And unfortunately, the genealogy has been lost in our move from Singapore to California. A small little black book that my uncle gave my dad. And as far as I can determine, the family Heiner, means woodsman or man of the forest, came from Alsace-Lorraine, and the Germanic name, of course, but at that time it was in the 1700s. I think the family came to the States. On my father's mother's side, the name is Sweet, S-W-E-E-T, which is the English side, and they came over on the Mayflower, one of the original settlers here in the colonies, and they settled in different places. And the Heiner family came over in the 1700s and settled in different towns, Kentucky and other places that have a name named Heiner. It's probably small little whistle stops, and they settled there. And as far as I can tell, the Heiners were merchants who came over from the German states, Alsace-Lorraine. Mulhouse is the name my father always used, and that area is always contested between France and Germany. And so if you can take my ancestry, my mother's family, of course, Irish. Kearns was her maiden name. Her mother's name was Downes, D-O-W-N-E-S. That's Irish, so my father always used to say that mostly my descendants of Irish side, majority, with a little bit of German and English mixed in. I suppose if you were to kind of combine it all together, half Irish, 1/4 German, 1/4 English, very close, I would say, approximate that. And I think some of our ancestors, as I've been told, on the Heiner side, the Sweet side, they killed the famous wolf dog of Governor John Endicott, one of the early governors of the colonies or states. I don't know how they happened to do that, but that was just one of the claims to fame. And the Sweets are prominent bone surgeons in Rhode Island. They're members of both sides of the family. The Heiner family fought on both sides in the Civil War. Uncle Frank was a riverboat captain in the Mississippi, according to what Dad said. And my father fought in World War I. He was a small arms instructor at the Great Lakes Naval Training Station in Illinois. It was, of course, the Navy. And one of his brothers was a major in the Army Quartermaster Corps in the Philippines during World War II. I don't know whether he was in prison or not from the Japanese, but he fought during that war. So all of my members of the family have seen some service. And I've always been interested in genealogy, where we came from and what we had to do, and trying to find some connection. I think it's important to know where you come from. I found a lot of my contemporaries didn't have the faintest idea of where they came from or family history. My father happened to actually be a lot older than the fathers of my contemporaries. Some had seen service in World War II. My dad went all the way back to World War I for his service.
Well, you're mentioning your dad's brothers and that sort of thing. Can you tell us a bit about your extended family? So, how many siblings did your parents have, and did you ever get to spend any time with them?
My dad came from a family of 10 children. He was the 10th. There were eight boys and two girls in the family, and some died in early childhood. There's a Charles Whirl who died early, Bernard and Everett and Leo, Louis. Louis Heiner was the one who did the genealogy back in St. Louis, and he was a jeweler of some sorts. The two women kind of raised my dad, because everybody else had kind of grown up and moved out. My dad had brothers who were old enough to be his father. And my grandfather, William Henry Heiner, was in the ladies' millinery business, made corsets and things like that for ladies at the turn of the century. And he was in a business called Heiner and Osgood in Decatur, Illinois. And I met some people from Decatur, and they'd heard about it, but I understand now that the place is just a parking lot. My dad used to talk about his house on Water Street in Decatur, Illinois, and about his friends that he had back there. He apparently had some experienced some anti-Catholic biases, because he remember going to apply for a job, and there were signs that Catholics and Jews and Negroes need not apply for a job here. And that was, very early in the 1900s, when there was a lot of prejudice around. And my dad told me one time he was dating a girl called Susanna, and I guess the parents said, Lawrence Heiner's a fine young boy, even though he is a Catholic.
So how about on your mother's side?
My mother's side, my grandfather, John Kearns, owned a very respected, fancy saloon, I would call it. And apparently a very nice interior, and they had a bulldog used to come down the street every day from home. They had a little pan of beer for him he drank from. And he was very successful. In fact, apparently he had so much money that he lent out to people during the Depression that he had a hard time collecting it when everything broke down, Depression, and so they didn't really have much available when they came out to Glendale, California. Her brother, Floyd Kearns, was in World War II, and he actually became a marshal, federal marshal later on. There's a photograph of him in the family records. being there at present, capturing some famous robber. But they all have to move out to California, I suppose, because I don't know whether he lost his business or had to sell the place, but it has I've got a card of his business, this famous saloon, and I got it in our record someplace, and I'll show it to you later on. It's at home in California.
So it seems like the family has a very strong Midwestern history, and you ended up in California, and that's where you live today.
Yes, right. I've got some Midwestern roots. Yes.
Do you think they just they ran into the sunshine and they would never go back?
Well, I don't know whether it's after my mother always talked about the cold weather in Minnesota, but Bemidji and places in Canada, and I'm sure weather was. In fact, I never mentioned the weather was one reason they came out to California, but they really liked it out here, and of course my father did too. And his one brother Everett settled in Fresno, California. Another one, Lewis, in Long Beach, California. Leo also in Long Beach, California. So they'd all boys had strong saints' names.
So tell us a little bit about family life in the Heiner household, and what's it like having a twin sister?
Oh, it's really amazing. It was tremendous. Let me go back a little bit to my mother, my father's family. His mother's name was Zulika Sweet. And it's interesting that both of the daughters, Catherine and Margaret, took Sweet as a middle name. But I see that on their gravestones. Anyway, getting back to your question about being a twin, it was a great experience. We were very, very close together. We went to the same schools together, except for a couple of years. And she's always a very good friend of mine and very close. And girls tend to grow faster than boys. So when we were in grammar school, she was about 5'6" when we were in about the 4th or 5th grade, and I was about 4'11". She used to look down at me and kind of hold my hand when we'd go to school. Looked like I was a little brother. But she was always very good, and she sometimes fixed me up with dates, and which is nice. She said, "I think this is going to be a good girl for you," and would line me up with somebody, and had a great relationship with her. We were very close and friends. She's best buddy, best friend.
They say sometimes twins have a telepathic link. Have you ever experienced anything like that before?
Not that we feel each other's pain physically like that, but we, although for children twins, we don't really look a lot. We have the same mannerisms. If you see us together, you can tell more about our manners, the way we react to things like that. We don't really think maybe the same things, but we can tell sometimes, like, thinking about calling each other on the phone. She lives in Dallas now. She would say, "I was just thinking about calling you," or she'd call me, and I'd say, "I was just thinking about calling you. Call me first." So there's that some type of sense.
So you said you were together for school most of the time. When were you not together in school?
Well, early we went to kindergarten together, St. Paul the Apostle in Westwood. Then my parents decided to send me to military school, St. John's Military Academy in South Central Los Angeles, which is a very exclusive school run by the nuns, an order of nuns, I guess, the Ursuline nuns. And the bus came and picked me up every day and drove me down there. And there were sons of movie stars that went to school with me, the Mitchum boys and the Crosby boys. They all went there together at the same time. And I remember getting on board with one of them. One boy always used to bring a box of Hershey bars, chocolate Hershey bars in a box. He had a different one every day. And this was the, let's see, I think it was one of the Mitchum boys. Lenny Crosby was one of my classmates, and Philip Crosby and Dennis Crosby's other brothers were classmates too at the school. And they had, we marched every day, and they had these war games that they had played. You could see the kind of bombs bursting out, and the lights going, people carrying stretchers with people laying on them, and it was really a good experience. And my mother took me out of it because a nun tried to change me. My writing is left-handed, and she used to whack me on my left hand with the ruler. And my parents, of course, didn't like that, and they changed me and pulled me out in second grade. I went to St. Paul the Apostle in Westwood, joined my sister there.
So they sent you to a military school, but they didn't want you to get too much discipline at the military school.
They wanted me not to feel guilty about being left-handed. They think that was right to have them try to change me from left-handed to right-handed.
Do you remember any sort of confusion you had about left hand or right hand dating from that time?
I don't really at all. You know, there's no problem. Another time that there was a change was in sixth grade. Sister Mary Chantel, Mother Superior, thought that my sister and I should be separated for some reason because that she thought we were getting too close. Well, naturally we're close, we're twins. So she suggested I change schools, and my parents enrolled me in Beverly Hills Catholic School with the Good Shepherd School for the sixth grade, and that was a different experience. Sometimes I didn't have anybody pick me up at school after school, so I had to walk home from Beverly Hills to Westwood. Walked along railroad tracks. It wasn't too bad. I used to pick up little popsicle sticks along the way and put them in my pocket. I don't know why I did that, but I'd come home and have all these little popsicle wooden sticks in my pocket.
Did you want to build something with the pop?
I don't know why I did that. I just happened to do that. Also, too, there was in that school, Lenny Crosby was in that school. He apparently went there from St. John's Military Academy to Good Shepherd. Another fellow called Dick Dornan, they gave me a nickname. They called me Fire Engine because during recess I used to run around and my face got real red. You know, which I didn't notice. They told me Fire Engine because my face was red the whole time. And even later on when I ran into both of them at Loyola High School, they said, "Here's Fire Engine."
So you went from St. John's to St. Paul the Apostle, and then from there through to
Loyola High School, 4 years for Jesuit Education. My father wanted me to have a Jesuit education, and he was instrumental in getting me admitted. We had to take an entry exam. 1,200 boys applied. I came in 252nd, which I suppose in the score of things, I wasn't really at the top. I wasn't at the bottom. I was towards the initial entry. My dad had to go down there and talk to Father Cesat, the principal, because I hadn't heard right away about my admittance, and he said he wanted to have his son have a Jesuit education. About weeks later, I got my letter of admittance.
So how many did they take from that group of 1,200?
Well, I think probably a little bit over 200.
Okay. Well, this was a pretty exclusive group.
Very exclusive, yes.
So what do you remember about those years? What classes did you like? What classes did you not like? What sports did you play?
Well, of course, we had 4 years of religion and 4 years of Latin. Very strict classical education. We had a classical diploma. We had speech and algebra the first year. Algebra was not one of my favorites. And in fact, Father Domachowski was my teacher, and he used to call me Heiner. Heiner, you're not doing too well. Well, I didn't want him to say that in front of the whole class, but he did. And I didn't really have a lot of interest in that. So consequently, I didn't really have the incentive to study a lot when I was home. History was interesting to me, and I was very good in spelling in grammar school. I won a spelling bee. I got first honors in grammar school. They gave me a certificate. And I was in spelling bee one time with one of the girls who was a brain, Pamela Sue Martin, and we came to a draw. Nobody won. I didn't make any mistakes, and she didn't make any mistakes. And I just was very good in that. Whether that correlates to something else, I don't know, but I was always able to formulate the correct spelling in my mind of a word. In high school, of course, I had chemistry and physics. I did not have a great love of those, neither did I enjoy geometry. For some reason, shapes and figures like that, I would say they eluded me, but I didn't have a firm grasp upon them. And my parents one time had to give me a tutor at home for math when I was in grammar school. I sometimes went to summer school, and when I was in grammar school, they boned up on my math. Interesting, when I got into business, I found out that working in business, that math had to be a strong part of my work, and I got to be very good at that. Of course, when you're getting paid for something,
You find the motivation.
Yes, my motivation.
So what about clubs, extracurricular activities, sports?
In grammar school, just played the usual things. At recess, we played football. I was on the school football team. I played on the line. We went to play against other Catholic schools, St. Augustine in Culver City, and Captain Ayers was our coach. In fact, we went on to swim. We had my parents sent us to swimming school when we were very young, and we had this one fellow, Captain Ayers, said, "If you don't jump in, I'm going to tie your feet and hands and throw you in." Well, that scared the heck out of us. So we jumped in, and my parents, I'm going to digress a little bit, they built a dream house in Mandeville Canyon, beautiful place. Had a bridge, had to go over a wash, and had, I guess, more than half an acre of land there. Had a swimming pool, 20 feet by 40, and kind of isolated. I used to hear the coyotes at night out in the prairie. Big house, had my own room, my sister had her own room, and we had a big lot, and we had a kind of a barn like over the garage with a ladder. We could crawl up on the ladder, and that was a dream house. I suppose we were supposed to stay there a long time. In fact, Los Angeles Times asked my parents if they could interview them and take some photograph of the house as a subject for their Sunday magazine, which they have on homes. And so our home was featured in Los Angeles Times Sunday magazine one time, and they had a lot of photos of us in the kitchen, different parts of the house. And somehow one of the motion picture studios learned about our house, and they came out and wanted to have one of their actors come and see it. And at that time, we had Robert Mitchum and his family. He was, a well-known actor at that time. Come out and take a look at the house. They had a picnic there with the two boys. And eventually, the studio bought the house for Robert Mitchum and his family. Of course, that was kind of a claim to fame there. Dad sold the house to Robert Mitchum. And of course, we had, before that, we lived out in a very nice two-story Spanish house in Brentwood, around the Brentwood Circle. And we used to make friends with kids around the place and play in the Bristol Circle. And one girl lived on the other side was Minnie Logan. Her mother was a stage actress, Ella Logan. Their stepfather, Freddie Finkelhoff, was a producer. Of course, a name like that, you might imagine he was Jewish, and asked us if we would like to be in the extras in a movie one summer, which was called The Egg and I. Fred McMurray, and Fred McMurray was in there, well-known actor at the time, and so we went to school on the set. We were there for 2 weeks. Unfortunately, I was having my eyes dilated, so I had to wear glasses and couldn't see too well. But I remember one time we were in kind of a farm scene, and I walked across by myself, across an area supposed to be closed off, and I wasn't supposed to. And the cameraman began yelling at me and cursing at me for doing that, and got back in line after that. But I was dancing in a square dance scene with a girl who was much taller than me, and actually you could see the top of my head floating across the screen. So much for my acting career there, but I had to get a Social Security card, because I was working. They paid, I guess, $75 a week in those days, 1947.
That wasn't bad pay for a kid.
That wasn't bad pay for a kid. And then one of my big highlights was during the summer of 1947, my father decided to send my mother and my sister and I to Hawaii for the summer on the SS Matsonia. USS Matsonia, part of the Matson lines, which actually the ship was still painted battleship gray because it was troop carrier during World War II. And we left from the port of Los Angeles to go to Honolulu. It took about a week to go over there. And during one of those nights when we were watching movies, in the movie theater, we were sitting in the pop-up chairs, the engines died, and the ship started to rock from one side to the other, and the seats are just kind of sliding from around the room. And of course, everybody wanted to go back to their rooms after that, and we had to climb up the steps, and people were getting sick, and getting sick to something because of the motion of the ship. I don't think I got sick, or my mother or my sister, but we finally got back to our rooms and got the engine fixed, and we were on our way. we landed in Hawaii, and Pearl Harbor was still the way it was. And after December 7th, 1941, they hadn't moved the ships yet. You see the USS Arizona with the steps leading down the water, smokestacks are above water, and they had all those bodies entombed in the ship. We stayed on Waikiki Beach, the one hotel, for 3 months, and had Waikiki calls there, and we made friends with a family that sold leis out in front of the hotel, Barbara Ogata and her family, and we used to go down to the beach there at Waikiki Beach, and there were only 3 hotels: the Moana, the Halekulani, and the Royal Hawaiian. And every day we walk up to the Royal Hawaiian, you had a juice bar, a pineapple juice bar, and I used to drink it dry every day. It was free. We even had a tour of the cannery factory, the pineapple factory there. They let us go and have samples. And my sister and I got to board surf. We got up on boards. Some beach boys taught us how to board surf. I always remember they taught me how to say dirty words, and they would tell me to say this to one of the boys, and I do. He come and pick me up and throw me in the water. I didn't know what I was saying, and but we got up on the board, and I guess we were out so much in the water, we had got 3rd-degree burns on our shoulder. We got terribly burned, and all the skin came off at night while we were sleeping. My mother, while she was there, made some friends with, I guess, a movie crowd, Frank Morgan. She was always out on the other side of the beach with them, socializing with them. And when we got back to the States, of course, we flew back in the prop-driven planes. My dad picked us up there. He had to go on business back in Chicago and East, so he couldn't join us. And he used to travel out by train from Union Station, Los Angeles. He was working for Lucien Long, a perfume cosmetic company. I remember working in the Bendix building in Los Angeles. Went down to his office one time to see him. And I remember coming back, I used to write to some of the boys that we met in Hawaii. One was Francie Lee. I think he was Chinese Hawaiian. And for some reason, I guess I gave him the idea that my dad was going to invite them to come over and stay with us. I got all these letters. When are we coming over? When are you coming over? And I guess I shouldn't have done that, but you're young, and sometimes you get carried away. And I had kind of invited him to come over, but he didn't come over eventually because we didn't send him the ticket. So that's kind of, so much for my school days. I guess I hadn't told you a lot about these things. You're probably hearing this for the first time.
Yes, definitely some of them.
Yeah. So after 1 year of 6th grade at Good Shepherd, my parents brought me back to St. Paul the Apostle, finished 7th grade and 8th grade, and graduated from there. And I'm digressing a little bit, but I wanted to kind of go through all these links.
That's fine.